Well, one thing I've always liked about the 750 Motor Club is variety, and what a show we've got for you in this next race. It is, of course, the last round this weekend at Snetterton of the M3 Cup, but joining forces is the 330 Challenge and also Bernie's V8s and the SR and GT Cup. We've got muscle cars versus touring cars, and what a soundtrack we've got for you as well. Andy, you're going to have fun in this next race.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Well, slightly greasy conditions here this morning for our first Tegiwa M3 Cup and Mtec Brakes 330 Challenge race. It's Tom Collar and Paul Cook on row one, with Nick Williamson and Graham Crowhurst next. Then Sam Taylor and Matt Maxted ahead of Andrew Lightstead, Darren Ball and Bill Reddrop. Matt Maxted is the lead 330 Challenge car. It's the M3s, unsurprisingly, the more modified, more powerful cars that are at the front of the field. Ahead of our first of two races this weekend, you can see the Bernie's V8 cars in the background. In these conditions, though, the more modern BMW should have the edge. Lights out, away we go, and the race gets underway. There is a delay before the V8 cars head out into the race anyway, so we will very much focus on the BMWs as they run in towards Richie's corner for the first time. And from the outside line there, looks as though that's Graham Crowhurst, I think, that leads, but gets all out of shape and spins. Graham Crowhurst loses it through turn one, and just when it looked as though he was going to seize the lead at the early going, unfortunately it all goes wrong. There's another car stopped to the right hand side as well, so a couple of cars unfortunately appear to potentially be going no further. There's damage to, I think that's Paul Cook's car, so it's been a lively start to the race, rather too lively for a few drivers' likings. Down towards Palmer's, I'm not even entirely sure who got the lead. No, it's Nick Williamson. Nick Williamson from third on the grid, once a winner already this season. He won out the Silverstone National Circuit back in May. Just the one win for him, though. Paul Cook has been very much the dominant man this season, with 6 race victories on the trot in the middle of the season at Croft, Brands Hatch and Silverstone International. So Paul Cook, with damage it would seem early in this one, he's still going. He's in second position, and then the 330 Challenge cars making their way through further back. It was Matt Maxted that had the pole. It's Matt Maxted that leads at the moment. Just behind him is Andrew Lightstead, the red car, and then car number 25 is Darren Ball with Bill Reddrop at the back. So the 4 330 Challenge cars all survived more or less intact, I think, through the first corner dramas. It was the spin for Crowhurst, and it would appear we potentially lost one other. Not entirely sure which one it was, though. Possibly Sam Taylor, who has pulled off at the side of the, no, Tom Collar, excuse me, I think it was Tom Collar, I think it was, that had pulled off coming out of turn one from pole position. So Tom Collar in strife early on. Battle here for second place in the 330s, though. That's Darren Ball pulling to the outside of Andrew Lightstead down towards Brundle and Nelson. The red car, I think, will stay in front. And in these slippery conditions, actually, the more production-based 330 Challenge cars are keeping up with the M3s. Remarkably, Paul Cook is keeping up with Nick Williamson, and in fact takes the lead from a sideways Nick Williamson, despite that fairly substantial damage to the front of his car. Darren Ball is sideways. There's more drama. Look further back. That's Bill Reddrop who's gone around. It's all kicking off here at Snetterton as they're out there in very greasy conditions. The rain has just started as the cars were gridding up, so they won't have been prepared for this necessarily. Paul Cook has got through to the race lead, but surely can't continue, although it would appear that the radiator's intact, so hopefully that means that his car should be okay to continue. He flashes through then, the race leader remarkably, from Nick Williamson in second place. Side by side here still between Darren Ball and Andrew Lightstead there, despite the moment that Darren just had up at the bomb hole. What a bizarre start to the race. There is the Tom Collar car that's parked at the side of the road, unfortunately, going no further. The race lead, it's a nice battle developing here between Paul Cook and Nick Williamson. Nick staying with Paul. And as long as Paul can see out of the car, and as long as there's no fluid coming from it, and as long as the officials don't think that that bodywork could come loose and create a danger for anybody else, then I suppose there's nothing stopping Paul Cook from continuing. But that car is far from in showroom condition. Down towards Agostini he goes then. Williamson closing in, look, though, as they go down the straight, so maybe that damage is just affecting the performance of the number 26 car, Paul Cook, a little. Paul, who races in several different championships amongst the 750 portfolio. He races very successfully in the MR2 Championship, and he's done 1 or 2 Enduro races this year as well in Road Sports and the Club Enduro Championship. There is Matt Maxted, your leading 330 Challenge car, and he is challenging now the M3 cars. In fact, he's going for third place overall here as they go down in towards the right-hander at Agostini. As I started to say earlier on, these more production-based 330s in the slippery conditions, actually having less power is not that big a disadvantage. If anything, you can handle the power a little bit better, as into the lead goes Nick Williamson. Now, that must have been an issue for Paul Cook because the car suddenly just slowed to go down the Bentley straight, and so Williamson takes over the race lead. You can see just how wet and greasy it's getting there. Well, Cook is still there in second, but surely that car cannot be healthy. Closing in on him now is Sam Taylor, who is the third remaining M3 Cup car. I don't think anyone else is running now after the early dramas. The whole field pretty much is still pretty closely bunched together. See a bit of damage there to the back of Taylor's car. Actually, it looks like the exhaust has been knocked loose somewhere. That's Paul Cook just struggling now on his way through Coram Corner, and I do wonder whether we're going to see that second placed car make its way into the pit lane very shortly. Down into the braking zone he goes. It's the blue car, blue and turquoise in front, number 11 of Nick Williamson, that's just retaken the race lead that he held earlier on before Paul Cook, with what's left of his car, moved ahead of him. Has Cook come into the pit lane? No, he's carrying on. So I don't quite know why he slowed down the back straight. Possibly that bodywork starting to lift and become a visibility issue. I'm not too sure. If it is, then it's going to affect him every time he goes down one of these long straights. But there doesn't seem to be any movement from the front bodywork. There is movement in the order though. Further back, look, up the inside comes Graham Crowhurst. So actually, I told a lie. We still have 4 M3s circulating. As Crowhurst now, oh look at that, Paul Cook again slows down. Suddenly going down towards Wilson, and so to one side of him goes Sam Taylor, to the outside goes Crowhurst on the grass, and Matt Maxted takes full advantage to move back into third place. So Crowhurst had got himself ahead of all of the 330 Challenge competitors. Now Matt Maxted's gone back through. Graham though fights back around the outside of Palmer's, which in the slippery conditions could be where the better grip is, and indeed it is. Gets good exit from the corner, closes in now on Sam Taylor. It's been a bizarre start to the race, but it's been very entertaining, we can't deny that. And Graham Crowhurst is now back into second place after that early spin, so having made a good start from 4th on the grid, Crowhurst looked as though he was going to lead through turn 1, and he did lead going into it, but he very much didn't lead coming out of it, because he lost the car and rotated very spectacularly in front of the pack. But now he looks like he's one of the fastest cars on the track, because he's closing in very rapidly here on Nick Williamson. So Williamson could potentially start to feel the pressure from Graham Crowhurst. We're only on the, third lap of the race, and Crowhurst done a really good job here to rally his way back to the front in what appear to be ever worsening conditions. There is no damage to the back of Crowhurst's car. Now, whether that's there from the first lap incident or his latest trip across the grass, I'm not too sure, but the rear bumper look has been pulled loose. Now, that almost certainly will catch the attention of the clerk of the course. Could well find himself being shown the black and orange flag, which is there to tell a driver that there may be an issue with your car that you're not aware of, and you need to come in and get it fixed before it becomes a danger to everyone around you. Of course, if that bodywork were to fly off, it could leave the track altogether, it could be collected by another car on the circuit, so it's important that for safety reasons that is repaired potentially. It may just fall off all of its own accord though, which is certainly what Crowhurst will be hoping, because he's clearly got pace. Look, he's going up the inside, or trying to go up the inside of Nick Williamson into Coram Corner. Couldn't quite make that one work though. He is very close though to the race leader, and it seems a matter of time as long as the car stays together. You can see there the damage to the rear of it though as they come out onto the pit straight. He gets in the slipstream now, and is this maybe the time at which Graham Crowhurst finds a way back through? The cars, as you'd expect from a one-make, tightly controlled one-make series, are near identical in performance down the straight, but Crowhurst has flicked his headlights on now, not just to see where he's going, but I think to try and apply the pressure psychologically to Williamson. He goes around the outside at Rich's corner. This is risky. Oh, Williamson sideways, he loses it. Oh, Williamson into the barriers. I didn't quite spot if there was contact, and look at that. Sam Taylor did a great job to avoid him, but Nick Williamson, I'm not entirely sure whether he lost the rear of the car under acceleration or received a bit of a love tap there from Graham Crowhurst, but either way, there is the end result. A damaged BMW M3 for Williamson, and the long race leader up to this point out of the race. So that was a real shame that it had to end like that. Now let's see if we can read his body language as he gets out. We're going to cut away, unfortunately. It would have been interesting to see whether or not he seemed particularly miffed at what had happened there. He won't be happy, I'm sure, but if it was self-inflicted, I suppose there's only so much anger you can have. Anyway, Matt Maxted comes across the start-finish line, still leading the 330 Challenge, and now, by my reckoning, into second place, because all of the other M3s have sort of fallen by the wayside. The conditions are ever worsening now, though. So Matt Maxted, who's got Andrew Lightstead, I think that was, in the red number 79 car, not a million miles behind him. There he is, the red car with the wing. There's a bit more variation in the cars in the 330 Challenge. You can run with or without those aerodynamic rear wings on the cars. They can essentially be almost as production-like as you want them to be, and then up to a certain level of modification allowed. But these BMW 330s, very, very good-looking cars, well presented as well. And Maxted leading the category fairly handsomely as he heads through the right-hander at Williams. And the Gaz Shocks liveried car is looking like it's going to be hard to beat in that category, although Lightstead will run him to the flag, I'm sure, if at all possible. Down underneath the bridge they go. In the background you can see Darren Ball is the white car that's third in the category. And as they drop down in towards Brundle and Nelson, they are close enough together that were any of them to have a moment, then that could change things. Look at the way they're sliding around there. This is very, very challenging indeed. The conditions out there are not pleasant at all. They're sort of those horrible in-betweeny conditions, aren't they? They're not fully wet, they're not fully dry either though, clearly. And the drivers are really scrabbling for grip, particularly out of the tight corners. It's very easy to find yourself rotating in these conditions through really an innocuous little moment if you're just a little over-eager with the loud pedal coming out of one of these tight corners. Then it can have big ramifications if you get it wrong. Side by side there for second place. In fact, Darren Ball has found a way past Lightstead now, so Ball makes his way into second place in the class. Can he now go after Matt Maxted, I wonder? Have to wait and see, but he certainly will be trying his best to do so. Through Riches they go again, back down the slight hill, I suppose you could say, towards the Wilson hairpin. Does make that braking zone all the more challenging. Darren Ball there with Lightstead trying to go round the outside. But no, it doesn't look as though there is any way through there for Lightstead, and Darren Ball appears to have better pace. He must have had a moment somewhere earlier on and dropped down the order, because he clearly has good speed, but unfortunately it just hasn't, the race didn't start quite the way that Darren Ball would have liked. Up towards Oggies now, this very tricky right-hander, and this is where they're going to struggle, I think, to get the traction down. Even these slightly less powerful cars, yes, look at that, Darren Ball very sideways as he heads through the right-hander. They do run on grooved tyres, these cars. Minimum tread depth, in fact, of 1.6 millimetres, so they do run with a little bit of assistance maybe for the greasy conditions, but I think it's just because it's greasy, not wet. It doesn't matter how many grooves you've got in your tyres, if it's not full standing water, then they don't really have enough water to clear, but it's just enough to make sure that the track is very, very slick indeed. So it's a challenge just to stay on the road at the moment. Darren Ball, they're doing a good job. This is where we saw them getting very sideways a lap ago. They're all a bit more tentative this time. Oh no, look at that, sideways for Lightstead. Did well to hang on to it, but Darren Ball, apart from that moment he had at Oggies a few seconds ago, just seemed to be in control of this. Oh, Lightstead, though, out of control. No, somehow saves it. That was a brilliant collection there for Lightstead. It looked for all the world as if he was heading off onto the grass on the inside, and he gathered it together again, but he's just lost a bit of ground now to Darren Ball, but Ball has his own moment now, and so any time gained has been lost well and truly with that one at Murray's. I was about to suggest that he might have been catching Matt Maxted, but I don't think that is the case anymore. Across the start-finish line, meanwhile, comes Graham Crowhurst. Graham Crowhurst is onto the final lap now. What has been an entertaining and dramatic, certainly only race of the weekend for the Tegiwa M3 Cup. And the Mtec Brakes 330 Challenge has provided us with plenty of thrills and spills as well. It's a bit of a BMW graveyard, though, through turn one, unfortunately, there, with Tom Collar's car, which has been parked at the side of the road since lap one, and Nick Williamson's at the side of the road after that weird moment that he had, really, when battling with Crowhurst. Couldn't quite see if there was contact. We'll hopefully hear from Graham post-race and he can maybe shed some light on it, but they were very close together indeed. But in these conditions, as we've seen, it only takes the slightest bit of over-enthusiasm with the right foot and around you'll go. These are very, very powerful machines, so all too easy to make a bit of a mistake in these conditions. And unfortunately at Riches, the ramifications for that little mistake can often be pretty severe, because if you go off left, you're in a field. If you go off right, you're into a barrier. Yellow flags down at Agostini, so someone's gone off or pulled off at this part of the circuit. Couldn't quite see who that was. I don't think we're missing anyone either. We know that Tom Collar is out of the race. We know that Paul Cook is out of the race. He was out after slowing a few laps into the race with that damage, and we know Nick Williamson is out. I don't think we've lost anyone else on this one, though, so perhaps just one of the other cars out there, maybe one of the Bernie's V8 cars having a bit of a moment just in front of Crowhurst. But Crowhurst is making his way now through Williams onto the Bentley Straight, and he's now only half a lap away, just less than half a lap away really, from a victory. His second victory of the year, but his first one since since Crowhurst, he hasn't won. I'm thinking of Nick Williamson. Nick Williamson was on for his second win of the year. Graham Crowhurst actually looking for his first victory of the season, so it's been a long time coming. He hasn't been with us for every round of the championship though. I think he made his debut a little bit earlier in the year at Brands Hatch. He's been with us ever since, had a couple of podiums, but not yet had a race victory. So it's good to have a new winner, and he will become the winner of this first race of the weekend. The 6th winner of the season, by my reckoning, Graham Crowhurst will be. After wins earlier on in the season for Sam Carrington-Yates, David Whitmore, Nick Williamson, Paul Cook then had those 6 in a row, and then Simon Walker-Hansel made an appearance last time out. In fact, he's been out a few times this year. The last time out at Donington Park on the national circuit, he took both victories, while Graham Crowhurst will be hoping to follow in his footsteps now, because he is about to win the opening race of the weekend for the Tegiwa M3 Cup. He wins it very handsomely indeed. There will be one other M3 runner at the flag, which will be Sam Taylor, but a long, long way down the order. So Crowhurst wins it, Matt Maxted is second and wins the 330s, with Darren Ball second and Andrew Lightstead third. Sam Taylor there, he is 5th overall, second in class, with Bill Redrob the last of the finishers.
Graham, that was a fairly dramatic race, and after a bit of trouble early on, it was your race in the end.
Yeah, I don't really know what's happened. It's a bit of a 15-minute blur. Obviously, I thought it was all over when Tom hit me from behind. You know, I don't know what happened. I don't know if I hit the brakes too hard, more than he expected. Obviously, resulted in a pile-up, and then I just thought, get my head down, and apparently I was 8 seconds a lap quicker on lap 2, and I honestly don't know how I've done it.
I think after an interesting season, I think the atmosphere down here at the podium says it all, and your smile as you got out of that car was a well-deserved one.
I wanted to end on a high, and you know, whatever happens in race 2 now, it's been a great championship, and hopefully next year we can continue.
Well, if the rest of the season is anything to go by, race 2 should be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Matt, can we sum that one up as eventful?
Yeah, definitely. It was absolute carnage, to be honest. It was sideways everywhere, but it still makes good fun, and I'm sure the spectators enjoyed it.
But here you are on the podium, so a good result after all that.
Yeah, I survived. That was the main game here. It wasn't really as much racing other people as much as you're racing the track and just trying to stay on the tarmac. But, you know, I've survived. Second overall, which came as a bit of surprise from Taylor spinning off on the last lap. But, you know, you take it when they give it to you.
A fair few tumbles on the leaderboard. So race 2, what's the game plan?
Survive. Bring the car home in one piece and survive. That's the game.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Well, that was an interesting way to go racing.
It was absolutely brilliant. No grip though. So just exciting all the way round. First race in M3 Cup as well. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, and the car's come back with a bit of damage, but it's something to fix for race 2.
Yeah, a bit of damage, but that's racing really. That's what happens. So it's all repairable, so get it fixed and back out.
Well, after that great win, first win in fact in the Tegiwa M3 Cup for Graham Crowhurst earlier in race 1, race 2 is about to get underway, and we know you enjoyed the variety and the rumble from those V8s, from Bernie's V8s, and obviously the 330s and the Sports Car and GT Cup as well that were included in this exciting race. I'm just going to speak to our pole sitter, Tom. Tom, it's going to be dicey out there, and you're sat on pole. How do you play that? What's the game?
Yeah, it is going to be dicey because we haven't run. Well, I didn't run because I had a little accident in the first one. Yeah. So yeah, haven't been out in these full wet conditions yet. So yeah, to see what the green flag lap holds, and then yeah, see what we can do.
I suppose you've got the advantage of running at the front, no spray.
Hopefully I can keep it that way as well, because these aren't easy to get off the line in the wet. So hopefully I can keep that advantage.
And you've got Graham directly in your mirrors, having got that win earlier. He's fired up. He's ready to fight.
Yeah, definitely. He's got that win. And he said he wants another one. So
and Matt was quick earlier as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be interesting. Those 330 boys have put on the wets as well. So we're all on our normal dry tyres, which do work in the wet. So yeah, we'll see.
That'll confuse them all at home. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, well, full wet conditions here for the second race of the weekend, and it's Tom Collar with Paul Cook on row 1, Graham Crowhurst and Nick Williamson on the second row of the grid. Then it will be Taylor, Maxted, Lightstead, Ball and Bill Redrop to round out the runners. Well, we had winning the first race for Graham Crowhurst, winning the second, winning the 330 challenge for Matt Maxted. Will we see the same result in race 2? Well, let's find out. Away we go, on board with Andrew Lightstead as he heads down towards turn number 1. Cars to the left, cars to the right, spray all around as well as they just struggle for visibility now in what are pretty nasty conditions this afternoon at Snetterton. Down towards turn 1 they go. That's Darren Ball to our left-hand side. We're going up the inside. It's interesting there what Tom Collar was saying about how the some of the cars have, some of the 330 cars have a full wet tyre, whereas the M3 cars are sort of on a grooved semi-slick, so that could maybe level the playing field a bit. Through the right-hander we go, down towards the left-hander at Palmer's, and out in front is by far and away the best place to be, because as you can see, it's just so hard to see when you get back into the pack, but here at least you can see where the puddles are, you can see where the more slippery bits of the track are. That is a luxury that can only be afforded by one driver, and that driver at the moment would appear to be Graham Crowhurst, our race 1 winner, who's clearly got his head around these conditions. Nick Williamson is second in his patched up number 11 car, Matt Maxted third there, leading the 330s, with Sam Taylor fourth, and then side by side for fifth, that's Tom Collar, the pole sitter, who didn't get very far in race 1, only made it round, well, halfway round turn 1 really, before going off the road. He's just got himself ahead of Darren Ball and Andrew Lightstead, who are fighting for second in the 330s. There is no sign, therefore, it would seem, of Paul Cook in this one. So Paul Cook, presumably the damage that he suffered at the start of race number 1 means that he will not be taking the start of the second race. Back on board with Andrew Lightstead as he heads through Oggies now, and you can see they're not going that close to the apex, at least the ones who are more sensible maybe are not going anywhere near the apex, because on the traditional racing line, actually in the full wet conditions, that's where it gets very slippery indeed. Offline, you can find a lot more grip and you can open the steering angle up a lot earlier, which means that you can get on the power a little bit earlier and a little bit harder. So there is definite logic to running around the edge of the track in these sort of conditions, rather than taking the traditional sort of point-to-point apex line that you would take in the dry. There's Crowhurst, Williamson in second place then. Third place is now Collar, so Collar's found himself past all of the 330 Challenge cars, and then I think that's Sam Taylor going around the outside of Matt Maxted, so that means that all of the M3s are now in front of all of the 330s. I did wonder whether maybe the 330s would have a bit more chance to compete here in this race, with it being full wet. It is, I think, the first full wet we've had all season for the Tegiwa M3 Cup of the Mtec Brakes 330 Challenge, so a bit of a voyage into the unknown, which is perhaps why we saw so many drivers having issues in the previous race, because this is a pair of championships in their infancy, so they won't have necessarily had that much track time at all, let alone in the wet. So that maybe is why we saw a few of them really struggling for grip in the opening race of the day. It's not just to do with the drivers not being able to handle the wet conditions, but you know, they may not have a wet setup yet because they haven't really had that much time in the wet to form a perfect wet setup. So that all makes this rather an entertaining prospect, I think, this race, this final race of the season. Side-by-side battle here behind as Matt Maxted is trying to come back at Sam Taylor. Maxted to the inside line, leading the 330 Challenge still. Matt Maxted has been a front runner in the 330s all year long in the races in which he's competed. Andrew Lightstead here following in behind. Look at him shuffling the wheel there, being so gentle with the driving inputs, both with the wheel, the brakes, the throttle of course. And then back into Palmer's. He's not a million miles behind that battle in front, and as you can see that Maxted's getting held up a little bit here by Sam Taylor. Maybe he can join in the fun. Change for second meanwhile, Tom Collar's found his way past Nick Williamson, so it's a shame that Tom Collar didn't get very far in the previous race, because clearly he has good speed. He's a bit late on the brakes there into Agostini though, runs out wide. I said the wide line was the grippier side of the road, but that was a bit too wide, and he doesn't have that much grip on the exit of the corner neither though, does Nick Williamson behind him, so Collar will hang on to second, but just cost him a bit of time in his pursuit of the race leader Graham Crowhurst. But yes, whatever the issue was for Collar, we didn't see whether he got caught up in contact at the start of the first race, or whether that was just a mechanical issue that put him off. Again, cars that are early on in their development cycle may be a bit more prone to mechanical failures than they will be once they've had a bit more track time in development. Tom Collar clearly one of the fastest drivers out there, but so far Graham Crowhurst looking hard to beat. He won the first race at a canter after everyone else fell off, admittedly, but he was in the fight for the lead anyway. He was dicing away with Nick Williamson when Nick went off, and he was ahead of Paul Cook as well, so it certainly was a deserved first victory of the year for Graham Crowhurst, and the trend so far this year, more or less, has been that whoever wins the first race wins the second. Only at Silverstone on the national circuit back in May did we have two different winners in the same day, because David Whitmore won race 1 and Nick Williamson won the second race. Well, Nick is down in third in this one. Graham Crowhurst, our race 1 winner, is leading race 2 as well in filthy conditions here at Snetterton on the 300 circuit. It's a long lap anyway, but in these sort of conditions we're looking at lap times in the high 2-minute 30s, which is remarkable. There are a few circuits in the UK that it takes that long to lap in, and comparing that to dry weather times, you could be knocking probably about 30 seconds off that. These are quick cars, particularly the M3s, and if the circuit was dry today, we would really get to see exactly what they can do, but alas, the autumnal British weather is living up to its reputation. And Maxted here still can't find a way past Sam Taylor, and is falling ever further into the clutches, I would say, of Andrew Lightstead, the red number 79 car behind. So the fight for the lead of the 330s could start to become more and more interesting as this race goes on, as the car at the back of the M3 Cup element of the race starts to become more and more of a factor. Certainly it doesn't look as though Sam Taylor has quite got his head around these conditions at the moment, just trying to make absolutely sure that he doesn't damage the car. Of course, that's the last thing you want to do, especially in the last race of the season, but it's all playing nicely into this man's hands, Andrew Lightstead, who is now within touching distance almost of Matt Maxted, who runs out wide at the hairpin. Now, does that give him better traction off the corner? It does. Look at that, the way he suddenly sort of squirts ahead as they come out of the corner. Really gets that power down a lot harder and a lot sooner than Andrew Lightstead was able to. Andrew now follows his lead, takes the wide line through Palmer's, but they both did the same thing there, so nothing gained through that corner for either of them really. Darren Ball, you can see in the background, the man who got past Lightstead for second late on in the previous race. He's not quite able to keep up this time around, at least not in the early stages, but things could change. He came on strong as the race went on earlier on. Darren Ball, again, another experienced BMW driver. Knows a thing or two about these rear-wheel drive machines, so I'm sure once he gets the car set up right, he will be a force to be reckoned with, and we hope that next year we'll see bigger grids across both of these championships. We mentioned before the race that they've sort of teamed up with the Burney's V8s series this weekend, but we hope that eventually they'll have big enough grids to warrant their own races, and that's certainly something that we anticipate will happen next year. Down underneath the Snetterton Circuit Access Bridge go our leading two, and Graham Crowhurst has now well and truly been reeled in by Tom Collar. Tom Collar looking to try and bounce back after the disappointment of a non-finish very early in the previous race. He's caught the leader. The trouble is, it's hard to overtake in these conditions because there is one ideal line. Not necessarily even the driest line, it's just that outside line is so potent that even though it leaves these nice inviting gaps up the inside through most of the corners, it's hard to make it stick because you just don't have the traction off the turns. So Tom Collar may have to try and get inventive here to find a way past Graham Crowhurst. He's taking the wide line through Coram there. That will give him the inside for Murray's if he can make this one work. This could be a really good move by Tom Collar, but Crowhurst with the outside line at Murray's has the better traction off the corner. So this is the issue, you see. You get the preferred line through one turn, but then the next corner, very often around the Snetterton 300 circuit, goes the other way. And so it's difficult to make the move stick. Down towards Riches goes Crowhurst, on board with him there as he went down the gears in towards this, what is usually a very quick right-hander. It's now just a quite quick right-hander, but in these conditions it probably feels like you're going incredibly quickly. Not that much runoff area as we saw on the inside line there if you have a moment. And in these rear-wheel drive cars, if they do get sideways, they tend to spear over to the inside line through there and into the barriers, as happened for Nick Williamson in the previous race. Nick is still running in third place, I believe, behind these two by some way though. But it is all about Graham Crowhurst and Tom Collar and their fight for the lead of the race. Collar has been behind Crowhurst now for over a lap and hasn't been able to find a way through. He's had a good exit though from Palmer's, and Crowhurst got a bit sideways. Is Graham going to feel the need to defend down towards Agostini? Probably will have to. And Tom Collar is looking, he's looking, he can't get to the inside. Instead though goes to the outside. Now has he managed to outfox Graham Crowhurst here? Because Graham naturally has gone to the inside to defend, but we know that the outside is where the grip is, so watch for the exit speed here for Collar. He gets the power down, gets a bit sideways. Does that cost him the chance of getting alongside into Hamilton? I think it did, but that was the right idea there for Tom Collar. Make Crowhurst defend, and then Tom will have, in theory, the grippier outside line. Instead, there he goes up the inside down towards Oggies, and in fact, that was such a decisive outbraking manoeuvre. There was little that Crowhurst could do, but then on the exit again, it's so hard to make that stick because the outside line's where the traction is. Collar's got back up the inside though again, I think in towards Williams. They're wheel to wheel through the right-hander, slipping and sliding their way through, putting on a fantastic show despite the conditions. Now, who got the better exit from the turn? Was it Crowhurst? Yes, it was. You can see in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen that he's just pulling himself level again with Tom Collar. But Tom now has the outside for the left-hander at Brundle, and that will give him the inside for Nelson, who is bravest on the brakes. Wheel to wheel for the lead of the race. Underneath the bridge they go. Collar, it looks like he's taking a nice wide sweeping line in. Crowhurst gets into the corner first, and it's a brave man who runs around the outside through there because it's so slippery even in the dry. It's so easy to outbrake yourself down there, and in the end Crowhurst hangs on. It's fascinating racing. It may be happening at much lower speeds than we're accustomed to seeing from the Tegiwa M3 Cup, but it is one of the best races of the season, arguably, because they're both fighting for control of their cars, fighting for the grippier side of the road, and it's a real psychological battle here between the two of them, as Tom Collar knows that he's quicker. He's proven that because he's been able to cruise straight onto the tail of the race-leading car with seeming ease, but just can't quite find himself on the right piece of road at the right time to move through. Crowhurst got a better exit that time, I think, from Murray's as well, because Collar hit the curb on the apex. That unsettled his car. So on to another lap, and Graham Crowhurst is still your race leader. Look at that, though, 120 miles an hour as they hit the brakes down towards Riches. That's mighty, mighty fast in these conditions, and Crowhurst just shimmies across to the inside of the road there. Has he run a bit too deep into the corner, though? This could be another opportunity for Collar, but once again he's being shown the inside line at the Wilson hairpin. Crowhurst was all out of shape, though, and Collar goes around the outside. He's late on the brakes, though. Surely he can't stop the car. Well, if he kept it on the island, he might have the speed off the turn, but no. Crowhurst gets over to the left-hand side, defends the inside down towards Palmer again. This is a cracking race, but Collar again goes through, and this time does have, I think, enough grip at Palmer's to make the move stick. He's finally done it, through actually almost making a mistake at the Wilson hairpin. He looked for all the world as if he'd outbraked himself then, but he found just enough traction on the grippier outside line to pull back alongside in towards Palmer's, and Tom Collar finally has wrestled the race lead away from Graham Crowhurst. The next question is whether or not Graham can fight back. At the moment it looks as though Tom is making good his escape. It looked as though he was the quicker of the two. He set the fastest lap as well earlier on in the race. So Tom Collar should, in theory, have the pace now to pull away, but wait and see what happens. We're on board with Crowhurst. We can now maybe follow Collar's lines and see where he's gaining time on him. See if Collar takes a slightly wider line there through the right-hander doggies. Crowhurst gets sideways as a result of that tighter line. The right-hander now at Williams. 55 miles an hour through there. That will feel like walking pace for these drivers. Dry, you'd be talking 70 miles an hour plus through that corner, because these cars have quite a lot of grip from their semi-slick tyres in the dry conditions, and the front splitter and the rear wing as well that create downforce at high speed. So the cars do grip well. They corner very, very quickly usually, but in the soaking wet conditions that we're seeing here today, everything is happening a little bit more slowly than usual, but that has certainly added to the entertainment value of this race. It's been one of the greatest head-to-head battles we've seen all year long. Tom Collar maybe has now just about got himself away, it would seem, from Graham Crowhurst. Nick Williamson, by the way, is still third, with Matt Maxted and Andrew Lightstead still tied together by a pretty short piece of string for the 3:30 challenge lead as well. We may well check in with those in a moment or two, now that this lead battle has calmed itself down slightly. And it definitely looks as though Tom Collar, as the car roars its way out of Murray's. They do sound good, these M3s as well. And Tom Collar pulling away now off into the distance. Back on board with Crowhurst as he heads across the start-finish line. We saw 120 miles an hour in towards Riches before. I think I saw 121 that time around. Look at the standing water on the outside of the road there, though, as they hit the brakes into this double apex right-hander, which is tricky enough in the dry. Again, in the wet, it becomes even more treacherous. And because the grippier side of the road is on the outside, that means that you're all that much closer to the edge of the circuit. So if you do misjudge it, you're going to be on the grass. And whilst the outside of the tarmac is nice and grippy, relatively grippy, everything's relative in these conditions, the grass certainly isn't. And if you get yourself onto the grass, you will be heading straight into something solid. Well, there's Nick Williamson, third position. Fourth place, not far behind him actually, is Sam Taylor. And this is the fight for the 3:30 challenge lead. Andrew Lightstead on the outside line has just gone through. He gets himself past Matt Maxted. So Maxted, who led all the way through race 1 and has led all of race 2 up until this point, has just lost the lead of the race to Andrew Lightstead. So Lightstead finds his way through, tips his way in towards the Wilson hairpin. Can he hang on now for the final 5 minutes or so? It's been a really really entertaining race. This actually, the grid may be modest and the speeds likewise, but the quality of the racing, you can't argue with this, can you? We've had a great head-to-head battle in the M3s. That seems to have now, at least for the time being, been settled in the shape of Tom Collar. So now we can turn our attention to this two-way fight for the 330 Challenge lead. Is Andrew Lightstead going to be able to do what Tom Collar is doing at the front of the field? Having got the lead of the race, Tom is now escaping. It looks as though Lightstead is doing the same to Matt Maxted here. He's pulling away slightly, although Maxted still pushing on. Takes a tighter line there into the Agostini left-hander. Gets one sideways though at the apex, and again on the exit of the corner, so not necessarily the quickest run out of the tight left-hander. Third car you can see in shot there is the Sam Taylor car. That is running fourth in the M3s. Tom Collar, though, is leading the M3s and is picking his way now through Coram Corner, the corner that we saw catching so many people out earlier on. And he just gets very sideways again there, but not quite as sideways as we saw some drivers in the earlier race. Andrew Lightstead, I think it was, wasn't it, that had the mother and father of all moments at that corner and somehow gathered it together. While Andrew now is leading the 330 Challenge part of the race. We'll monitor that with interest to see whether or not he can hang on to that. Race leader though overall, and the race leader in the Tegiwa M3 Cup heads out of Murray's Corner onto the pit straight, getting into the closing stages of this race. In fact, we're onto the final lap now with the yellow and black car of Tom Collar now in what would appear to be an unassailable lead. In fact, you can't even see Graham Crowhurst behind, so I think that Graham, having lost the lead, has probably decided, since he's a million miles ahead of anybody else, especially anyone else in his class, then he may as well just back things right off. The gap, in fact, between Crowhurst and Williamson last time through, second and third in the M3s, was over 45 seconds, so there really is no point in Graham Crowhurst pushing on now. He's lost the lead to Collar, he's not going to catch Collar, and so Tom will take the victory, it would seem, and this will be Tom Collar's first win of the year. Again, I'm not sure whether Tom has been with us much earlier on in the season. Yes, he did race with us at Brands Hatch earlier on in the year, and indeed at Croft and at Silverstone. So Tom Collar was with us for the first few rounds, missed the Silverstone International rounds by the looks of it, and then was back on the podium last time out at Donington. So actually, yes, so Tom is one of the more experienced drivers in the field. No surprise, therefore, that in the slippery conditions here in race 2, very slippery conditions, he's been able to come through, it would appear, the victor, because he's just 2 corners away now from taking what will be his first victory of the year. He'll become the 7th different winner. So again, really promising season for the M3 Cup, and if we can get a few more cars next year, then we're in for an even bigger spectacle. That was a bit of a spectacle there, though, an unplanned one, I'm sure, for Tom Collar, as he got very sideways coming through Coram and nearly threw it all away, but he has made his way out of the final couple of turns, and Tom Collar heads towards the start-finish line, sees the checkered flag, and wins the final round of the Tegiwa M3 Cup. Checkered flag for Tom Collar, and again did a good job just to survive that one, but it was a really thrilling battle that he had with Graham Crowhurst in the middle portion of that race. Here are the 330s, and Andrew Lightstead is leading the way still. He's actually caught Nick Williamson, the M3 Cup car that's going to come home third in the M3 Cup, but Lightstead is still under immense pressure here from Matt Maxted. This is going to run right down to the last corner. There's a back marker in the way as well. That's one of the Bernie's V8 cars that we're sharing the grid with here this weekend. It stays out of the way though, on board with the race leader Andrew Lightstead, who is looking for a victory here to share the honours this weekend with Matt Maxted. Into the final corner he goes, gets it all out of shape though, gathers it together, he's over the curb, he's a bit slow off the corner now. Where is Maxted? Oh no! Lightstead's made another moment and through goes Maxted. Maxted gets the lead and gets the victory off the final corner. Andrew Lightstead will be absolutely furious with himself for that. He just got it all out of shape turning into Murray's, ran a bit wide over the curb, and ended up losing the class victory. So it is going to be a double win in the 330 Challenge for Matt Maxted in dramatic fashion there, suitably dramatic fashion, because it's been a dramatic weekend of racing for the Tegiwa M3 Cup and the Mtec Brakes 330 Challenge. It's Collar from Crowhurst from Williamson, your top 3 and the top 3 M3s, with Matt Maxted and Andrew Lightstead swapping the 330 class victory at the final corner.
Tom, as an old cliche in motorsport, that if you're going to take a championship, you want to be on the top step of the podium.
Yeah, that's the way you want to do it, and yeah, I've been looking for this win all year, so to finally get it is brilliant, yeah, along with the championship. You
started on pole, it wasn't all plain sailing though, that first start there wasn't great.
No, we're on the green flag lap, couldn't get going, just wheel spin, both first and second. Thought, oh, I'll try a nice steady start and just stalled. So hey, let's make the race fun, and yeah, had pace and could move through. But yeah, Graham drove really well, and even though I caught him, he made it hard, which is nice. It makes the win more worth it.
Hard but fair, I think is fair to say out there.
Yeah, no, he put the car in all the right places, and we had some lovely side-by-side moments, and yeah, great drive by him, definitely.
But as far as you're concerned, the car's in exactly the right place right now. Well done.
Yeah, thank you.
Tom Collar then takes the M3 Cup here at the final round in perfect fashion on the top step of the podium as he leaves, set to get the car ready for another season next year, perhaps in the club Enduro. We wish all of the M3 Cup regulars and all of the competitors this season a great winter's break, and we look forward to more great action and close racing in the 750 Motor Club next year.